The cargo bay of the human research vessel, Meridian, hummed with the low vibration of life support systems. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her tablet as she walked between the containment units, each one housing a different species rescued from the slave markets of Kepler Station. The raid had been successful, liberating over 200 sentient beings from various worlds across the galaxy. Most of the rescued aliens had already been relocated to appropriate rehabilitation centers or returned to their home worlds. But one remained, and she was proving to be a unique case. Zarathiel stood nearly 7 feet tall, her iridescent blue skin catching the artificial light of the cargo bay. 4 arms moved gracefully as she organized the small living space that had been set up for her, while her large violet eyes tracked Sarah's approach. The Vorthak female was beautiful by any standard, with elegant features and a lithe, athletic build that spoke of a warrior's heritage. "Good morning, Zarathiel," Sarah said, keeping her voice gentle. After 3 months aboard the ship, the alien woman had learned basic English with remarkable speed, though her understanding of human customs remained limited. "Dr. Chen," Zarathiel replied, her voice carrying a musical quality common to her species. "I have been waiting for you." Sarah noticed the way Zarathiel's secondary arms fidgeted with the simple clothes they had provided her. The Vorthak wore a loose-fitting jumpsuit designed for multi-limbed species, but she had modified it somehow, making it more form-fitting. "How are you feeling today? Any concerns about your health or comfort?" Zarathiel tilted her head. A gesture Sarah had learned indicated confusion or deep thought among her people. "Dr. Chen, I must ask you something that troubles me greatly." "Of course. What's on your mind?" The alien woman stepped closer, her violet eyes searching Sarah's face intently. "Is everything okay, human? You haven't taken me as your mate since I was brought here." Sarah nearly dropped her tablet. "I'm sorry, what?" "Among my people, when a warrior rescues another from bondage, it is customary for the rescued to become the mate of their savior. It is how we show gratitude and how strong bloodlines are preserved." Zarathiel's 4 hands gestured expressively as she spoke. "You and your crew rescued me from the slave traders. By rights of combat and honor, I should be your mate." Heat flooded Sarah's cheeks. This was definitely not covered in the xenobiology textbooks. "Zarathiel, I think there's been a misunderstanding about human customs." "But you are the strongest human on this vessel," Zarathiel continued, her tone growing more concerned. "I have observed your crew. They defer to you on matters of the rescued ones. You carry yourself as a warrior, and your knowledge makes you valuable for breeding strong offspring." Sarah held up her hands. "Okay, let's take a step back here. First, I'm not the strongest human on this ship. I'm a xenobiologist, a scientist. Second, we don't claim mates through rescue." Zarathiel's expression grew more troubled. "Then have I offended you in some way? Is it because I was a slave? Among the Vorthak, that would not diminish my worth as a mate, but perhaps humans have different standards." No, that's not it at all." Sarah ran her hand through her hair, trying to figure out how to navigate this cultural minefield. "Zarathiel, you haven't done anything wrong. Humans form romantic partnerships differently than your people do." "Romantic partnerships," Zarathiel repeated slowly, testing the words. "This is like mating bonds." "Similar, yes. But we choose our partners based on mutual attraction, compatibility, and emotional connection, not through rescue or combat." Zarathiel was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "But you did rescue me. Does this not create a bond between us?" "It creates a connection, yes, but not a romantic one, at least not automatically." Sarah found herself studying the alien woman's expressive face. There was an intelligence there, a depth that had nothing to do with her exotic appearance. "I see." Zarathiel's lower arms wrapped around her torso in what Sarah had learned was a self-comforting gesture. Then I have misunderstood my place here. I apologize for any awkwardness I have caused. Something in her tone made Sarah's heart clench. Zarathiel, you haven't caused any awkwardness. And your place here isn't as a mate or a debt to be paid. You're here as a person recovering from trauma, figuring out what comes next in your life. What comes next? Zarathiel repeated thoughtfully. On my home world, what comes next was always determined by others. First my family, then the clan leaders, then the slavers. I do not know how to determine what comes next for myself. Sarah felt a surge of protectiveness toward the alien woman. That's something we can work on together. Part of being free is learning to make your own choices about your life. And if I chose you? The question was asked quietly, but it hit Sarah like a plasma bolt. What do you mean? Zarathiel met her eyes steadily. If I learned your human ways of choosing partners, and I chose you, would you consider me? Sarah's mouth went dry. She'd been so focused on the cultural misunderstanding that she hadn't really considered the possibility that Zarathiel's interest might be more than just obligation. That's not a decision that should be made right now. You're still recovering, still learning about life outside of captivity. But you do not reject the possibility? Sarah looked at the tall alien woman, noting the way her violet eyes seemed to glow with hope and uncertainty. There was something about Zarathiel that drew her in, had from the first day they'd brought her aboard. Her intelligence, her quiet dignity even in captivity, the way she observed everything with such careful attention. I don't reject the possibility, Sarah admitted. But I want you to be sure that any choices you make are truly your own, not influenced by gratitude or confusion about human customs. A slow smile spread across Zarathiel's features, transforming her already beautiful face into something radiant. Then perhaps you would teach me more about human courtship customs, so that I might make an informed choice? Sarah found herself smiling back despite her better judgment. I think that could be arranged. But we take it slow, okay? There's no rush. No rush, Zarathiel agreed, though the way her four hands moved in an excited flutter suggested she might not entirely understand the concept. As Sarah left the cargo bay, she couldn't help but wonder what she was getting herself into. She'd rescued dozens of species over the years, but none had ever asked to court her before. The thought should have been more alarming than it was. Instead, she found herself looking forward to their next conversation. 3 weeks had passed since Zarathiel's unexpected declaration, and the dynamic aboard the Meridian had shifted in subtle but noticeable ways. Sarah found herself spending more time in the cargo bay, ostensibly checking on their remaining passengers' progress, but increasingly drawn by genuine curiosity about Vorthak culture and Zarathiel herself. Today I have prepared something for you, Zarathiel announced as Sarah entered her living space. The alien woman had rearranged the furniture again, creating what looked like a small dining area with cushions arranged around a low table. What's this? Sarah asked, settling onto one of the cushions. She'd grown accustomed to Zarathiel's enthusiastic attempts to understand human customs, though they often took unexpected directions. A human dating ritual, Zarathiel said proudly, her forearms working in coordination to set out various items on the table. I have been researching in your database. Humans share food together when they are interested in potential mates, yes? Sarah looked at the spread before her and tried to hide her smile. Zarathiel had clearly raided the ship's mess hall, but the result was an eclectic mix of human rations, some kind of blue paste she'd apparently made herself, and what looked like decorative flowers fashioned from spare fabric. This is very thoughtful, Sarah said honestly. You've been studying human customs? Extensively, Zarathiel confirmed, settling gracefully onto the cushion across from her. though I confess some confusion. Your species seems to engage in many contradictory behaviors when seeking mates. Sometimes you compete for them, sometimes you collaborate, sometimes you offer gifts, sometimes you share activities. The patterns are complex. Sarah laughed. Welcome to humanity. We're not exactly known for being straightforward about anything, especially relationships. This troubles me, Zarathiel admitted, her secondary arms fidgeting with her modified jumpsuit. Among the Vorthak, courtship rituals are clearly defined. The interested party demonstrates their strength, their ability to provide, and their genetic compatibility. Success or failure is obvious. And how exactly do you demonstrate genetic compatibility? Sarah asked, then immediately regretted the question as Zarathiel's cheeks darkened to a deeper blue. Through combat trials and compatibility testing that would likely be considered inappropriate by human standards, she replied with unusual shyness. Your species seems to rely more on emotional connection and something called chemistry that has nothing to do with actual chemical reactions. Sarah took a bite of the blue paste, which turned out to be surprisingly sweet and nutty. This is delicious. Did you make it yourself? It is a traditional Vorthak comfort food made from crushed hava nuts and sweetened with fruit nectar. I synthesized approximations using your food processors. Zarathiel's pride was evident. On my world, sharing food from one's home world is a sign of trust and, what is your word, vulnerability? The meaning behind the gesture hit Sarah suddenly. Zarathiel, are you sharing something from your culture with me? Yes. I thought perhaps if I could not understand all human customs, I could show you some of mine, to see if there could be harmony between them. Sarah set down her spoon and really looked at the alien woman across from her. Over the weeks, she'd watched Zarathiel transform from a traumatized refugee into someone confident and curious about the world around her. But this was the first time she'd seen her deliberately bridge the gap between their species. Tell me more about Vorthak courtship, Sarah said. Not the combat trials, but the emotional aspects. Do your people fall in love? Zarathiel considered this carefully. We have a concept similar to love, but it is more practical perhaps than human love appears to be. We form deep bonds with our chosen mates, bonds that last lifetimes. But these bonds are based on respect, compatibility, and shared goals rather than the intense emotional experiences your literature describes. That doesn't sound practical. It sounds sensible, Sarah observed. Human romantic love can be pretty chaotic. I have noticed this in your entertainment media, Zarathiel said with a slight smile. Much drama and angst over relationship difficulties that seem easily resolved through direct communication. Don't let anyone back on Earth hear you say that. You'll destroy the entire romance industry. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in thought. Sarah found herself studying Zarathiel's movements, the graceful way she used all four arms to manage her meal, the subtle expressions that flickered across her features. There was something hypnotic about her, something that went beyond mere physical beauty. Dr. Chen, Zarathiel said finally, may I ask you something personal? You can call me Sarah, and yes, you can ask. Do you find me attractive by human standards? Sarah nearly choked on her food. That's certainly direct. I have been studying human attraction patterns. But your species seems to have very broad ranges of what is considered appealing. I know that some humans find non-human species attractive, but I am uncertain whether you are among them. Sarah set down her utensils and met Zarathiel's gaze. Honestly? Yes, I do find you attractive. You're beautiful by any standard, but it's not just your appearance. It's your intelligence, your adaptability, the way you approach new situations with such thoughtfulness. Zarathiel's skin shimmered slightly, A response Sarah had learned indicated strong emotion. "This pleases me greatly. I was concerned that perhaps my alienness would be off-putting." "Your differences aren't off-putting. They're fascinating," Sarah admitted. "Though I have to ask you the same question. Do you find humans attractive? Or is this interest based purely on gratitude and custom?" "Initially, yes, it was custom," Zarathiel said with characteristic honesty. "But as I have learned more about your species and about you specifically, I find myself genuinely drawn to you. Your compassion, your dedication to helping others, the way you treat me as an equal despite our differences." She paused, her violet eyes searching Sarah's face. "Among my people, physical appearance is only one factor in choosing a mate. Compatibility of minds and spirits is far more important. In this, I believe we are very compatible." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. This conversation had moved far beyond cultural exchange into something much more personal and immediate. "Zarathiel, I know you said we should take time," Zarathiel interrupted gently. "And I understand your concerns about my ability to make free choices. But I want you to know that every day I spend learning about your world, every conversation we have, makes me more certain of what I want." "And what do you want?" Zarathiel reached across the small table with one of her primary hands, palm up in invitation. When Sarah hesitantly placed her hand in it, she was surprised by the warmth and the slight tingling sensation where their skin touched. "I want to continue learning about your customs and your world. I want to share my culture with you. And I want to explore whether two very different species can build something together that is stronger than what either could create alone." Sarah looked down at their joined hands, noting the way Zarathiel's blue skin seemed to shimmer where they touched. "That's quite an ambitious goal." "The best goals usually are," Zarathiel replied with a smile. "Besides, from what I have learned about humanity, you excel at achieving impossible things." Sarah laughed, surprised by how natural this all felt, despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. "We do tend to be stubborn about defying expectations." "Then perhaps you will help me defy expectations as well," Zarathiel said softly. "I was a slave, told my entire life that my value was only in service to others. But with you, I feel like I could be something more." The weight of that statement settled over Sarah like a warm blanket. She was looking at a being who had survived unimaginable trauma and was now reaching toward something beautiful and hopeful. The fact that she wanted to reach toward it with Sarah made her chest tight with emotion. "I think I'd like that very much," Sarah said finally. Zarathiel's smile could have powered the ship's engines. 6 months after the rescue at Kepler Station, the Meridian docked at Luna Station for resupply and crew rotation. Sarah stood at the observation deck, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon, with Zarathiel beside her. The alien woman had traded her modified jumpsuit for actual clothing, a flowing dress designed for her four-armed physique that she'd ordered from a specialty shop on the station. "It's beautiful," Zarathiel murmured, her violet eyes fixed on the blue and white marble of humanity's homeworld. "No wonder your species fights so hard to protect what they care about." "Are you nervous about meeting the review board?" Sarah asked, though she could feel the tension in Zarathiel's posture. The review was a formality at this point. Zarathiel had chosen to request asylum on Earth rather than return to the Vorthak homeworld, where her status as a former slave would mark her permanently. But bureaucracy was bureaucracy, even when dealing with interstellar refugee cases. "Nervous, yes, but not about the review," Zarathiel admitted. "I am nervous about whether I can build a life in a world so different from everything I have known." Sarah reached for her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months they'd spent growing closer. "You won't be building it alone." Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully. with both of them navigating the complexities of interspecies courtship. Sarah had insisted on thorough psychological evaluations to ensure Zarathiel was making free choices, not decisions influenced by trauma or misplaced gratitude. The sessions with Dr. Martinez had been enlightening for both of them. "Dr. Chen," came a voice from behind them. Captain Rodriguez approached, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "I need to speak with you both." Sarah felt Zarathiel tense beside her. "What's wrong?" "We've received a communication from the Vorthak Dominion. They're demanding Zarathiel's return." The color drained from Zarathiel's skin, her blue tone fading to pale lavender. "What grounds do they claim?" Rodriguez handed Sarah a data pad. "They're claiming that as a former combat slave, she's considered military property of the state. They argue that her rescue was theft of government assets." "That's ridiculous," Sarah snapped, scanning the formal document. "She was sold by slavers, not captured from military service." "My family sold me to cover debts," Zarathiel said quietly, her voice hollow. "When the slavers were defeated by rivals, I was resold to the ones you rescued me from. At no point was I military property." "The Dominion is claiming otherwise," Rodriguez continued. "They say all Vorthak females of warrior caste are automatically considered military reserves, and that makes her government property regardless of how she ended up in slavery." Sarah felt cold fury building in her chest. "So they're retroactively claiming ownership of someone who was sold by her own family? That's convenient." "Dr. Chen," Zarathiel said softly, "perhaps it would be easier if I simply returned. I do not wish to cause diplomatic problems between your peoples." "Absolutely not," Sarah said immediately. "You're not property, military, or otherwise, and you've formally requested asylum. Earth doesn't extradite asylum seekers to governments that classify sentient beings as property." "The situation is more complex than that," Rodriguez admitted. "The Vorthak Dominion has trade agreements with the Sol Federation. There could be economic consequences." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Are you seriously suggesting we trade away a person's freedom for economic convenience?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Rodriguez replied firmly. "I'm informing you of the political realities. The decision isn't mine to make, but you should be aware of the pressures the review board will be facing." After the captain left, Sarah and Zarathiel stood in silence, watching Earth continue its slow rotation. Finally, Zarathiel spoke. "Perhaps this was always inevitable. I was foolish to think I could simply choose a new life." "You're not foolish, and this isn't over," Sarah said fiercely. "Humanity has a long history of telling powerful entities exactly what they can do with their demands for our people. I am not your people, Sarah. I am one alien woman with no family, no clan, no resources to fight a government." Sarah turned to face her fully, taking both of Zarathiel's primary hands in hers. "You are my people, and you're not alone." Over the next 3 days, Sarah threw herself into preparing for the review with an intensity that surprised even her colleagues. She compiled documentation of Zarathiel's treatment in slavery, testimonies from other rescued Vorthak, who confirmed that military service was voluntary, not automatic, and legal precedents from a dozen different worlds regarding asylum rights. But it was Dr. Martinez who provided the most crucial piece of the puzzle. "I've been reviewing the psychological evaluations," she told Sarah as they prepared for the hearing. "There's something interesting about the trauma patterns we documented." "What do you mean?" "Zarathiel shows clear evidence of prolonged conditioning typical of military training, but it predates her enslavement. The pattern suggests she was conditioned from childhood for combat service." Sarah frowned. "But she said she was never in the military." "Exactly. Which means either she's lying, which my evaluation suggests she isn't, or the Vorthak Dominion has been conditioning their warrior caste females from birth, possibly without their knowledge or consent." The implications hit Sarah like a freight hauler. They've been brainwashing their own people into thinking military service is voluntary when it's actually programmed conditioning. And if we can prove that, Dr. Martinez continued, then Zarathiel's case becomes about more than asylum. It becomes about exposing systematic mental conditioning of an entire population. The review hearing took place in a sterile conference room on Luna Station. 5 board members sat across from Sarah, Zarathiel, and their legal advocate, while diplomatic representatives from both the Sol Federation and the Vorthak Dominion observed. Zarathiel answered questions with quiet dignity, explaining her family history, her sale into slavery, and her rescue by the Meridian. When asked about her military service, she was clear and consistent. I was never formally enlisted in any military organization. On my world, females of warrior caste are educated in combat skills as part of our cultural heritage, but service is supposed to be voluntary. Supposed to be? Pressed the lead board member. I have come to realize that what I was taught was voluntary may not have been truly voluntary, Zarathiel replied carefully. The human Dr. T. Martinez has helped me understand that some of my responses and thought patterns are consistent with conditioning, rather than free choice. The Vorthak diplomatic representative leaned forward. This is preposterous. The Dominion does not engage in mental conditioning. Our females choose military service freely. Dr. Martinez stood to present her findings. The psychological evidence was damning. Neurological patterns consistent with childhood conditioning, suppressed memory gaps around certain topics, and autonomic responses that suggested programmed behavioral modifications. What you're suggesting is a serious accusation against a sovereign government, the Vorthak representative protested. What I'm documenting is clear evidence of systematic conditioning that bypasses conscious consent, Dr. Martinez replied calmly. Whether that constitutes an accusation is up to this board to determine. The board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the lead member addressed Zarathiel directly. Based on the evidence presented, this board finds clear grounds for asylum. More than that, we find evidence of systematic conditioning that calls into question the voluntary nature of military service in the Vorthak Dominion. Ms. Zarathiel, your asylum is granted with full Sol Federation citizenship rights. Zarathiel's skin shimmered brilliantly, all 4 hands reaching for Sarah simultaneously. But the board member wasn't finished. Furthermore, this case will be forwarded to the Galactic Ethics Council for investigation into conditioning practices within the Vorthak Dominion. Other individuals who believe they may have been subjected to similar conditioning are invited to request asylum review. The Vorthak representative stormed out, but Sarah barely noticed. She was focused entirely on the woman beside her, whose violet eyes were bright with tears of relief and joy. "You did it," Zarathiel whispered. "You fought for me against an entire government." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "And it's not just about us anymore. This could help others like you." "Others like me," Zarathiel repeated wonderingly. "I had not thought there might be others questioning what they were taught." 6 months later, more than 300 Vorthak women had requested asylum in Sol Federation space, each bringing stories of conditioning and coerced service. The Galactic Ethics Council's investigation had revealed a systematic program of mental conditioning spanning generations. Sarah and Zarathiel stood in their new apartment on Earth, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Zarathiel had started working as a cultural liaison, helping other Vorthak refugees adapt to life in human space. Sarah had been promoted to head of the xenobiology department, largely due to her groundbreaking work in interspecies trauma recognition. "Do you ever regret asking that question?" Sarah asked, thinking back to that first awkward conversation in the cargo bay. "About taking you as my mate?" Zarathiel smiled, all 4 arms sliding around Sarah in a complex embrace that had taken months to perfect. "Never." Though I understand now that mates is not the correct human term. What would you call us? Zarathiel considered this seriously. Partners in the largest sense. We build a life together, fight for each other, grow together. In Vorthak, the word would be Thanelis, two who choose to become more than the sum of their parts. I like that, Sarah said, leaning into the warmth of the alien woman who had become the center of her world. Though I still think girlfriends has a nice ring to it, too. Zarathiel laughed, the musical sound echoing through their home. Humans and your need to make everything sound casual. Very well. I am your girlfriend, who is also your Thanelis. Best of both worlds, Sarah agreed, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other rescue ships were bringing other refugees to safety, other impossible relationships were beginning, and the galaxy was slowly becoming a place where love could transcend species, governments, and the weight of terrible histories. It had started with a simple misunderstanding about mates and customs. It had become something that changed two worlds and hundreds of lives. That, Sarah thought, was very human indeed.